Education is what's important. Training, preparation for the expected. Education, preparation for the unexpected.
Good afternoon, Team Krulak community, and good morning to those of you joining us from other parts of the country here. And on behalf of Marine Corps University, the Marine Corps University Foundation, and the Krulak Center for Innovation and Future Warfare, welcome back to the Brewcast, our series designed to connect the worlds of the warfighter and PME with the best in innovative and creative thought. I'm your host, Major Ian Brown, Operations Officer at the Krulak Center. Before we begin, please remember that all opinions expressed here are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Krulak Center, Marine Corps University, the United States Marine Corps, or any other agency of the U.S. government. So to get things going, welcome to Season 5 of the Brewcast. It's a new academic year here at Marine Corps University, and we here at the Krulak Center are excited about launching into it with our students. And so we're going to up the ante by getting the season of the Brewcast off to a strong start. And we could not have asked for a better guest today to help us do that. Today, we're pleased to welcome Col Brian Greene, United States Marine Corps, the commanding officer of the Marine Corps Tactics and Operations Group, or MKTOG, at 29 Palms, California. MKTOG has been deeply involved in the work behind Force Design 2030, which has been a topic of discussion in recent months, both in the headlines and on our own Brewcast series. MKTOG also runs the Advanced Maneuver Warfare course, which trains operations tactics instructors and intelligence tactics instructors for operations today and in future conflicts. And they do a tremendous amount of other things as well. So Col Greene is going to talk about these and give you a chance to learn more about what his organization provides to the Marine Corps. So Col Greene graduated from Glenville State University with a BS in criminal justice and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps in 1998. He has commanded from platoon to battalion level. He served as the Rifle and Weapons Platoon Commander in 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, as a company commander at the School of Infantry East, where he deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom as a military training team member to an Afghan light infantry battalion. He's commanded companies in 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines, deploying twice to Fallujah in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and later commanded 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines as the battalion landing team on the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. His staff assignments include Executive Officer of 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines and of SOI East, and Operations Officer billets at 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines, 5th Marine Regiment, and the Special Marine Air Ground Task Force Crisis Response Central Command during Operation Inherent Resolve. Col Greene has also served as an instructor at MKTOG, where he deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom with 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines. Additionally, he was a planner at the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force and deployed with 1 MEF forward as Regional Command Southwest in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. And he most recently served as the Deputy Director for Evaluation at Headquarters Marine Corps Programs and Resources, with a follow-on assignment to Marine Air Ground Task Force Training Center as the Future Operations Officer. So as you can tell, we have a very experienced individual here in charge of Marine Corps Tactics and Operations Group, and this is a unique opportunity to learn more from him and learn what his organization provides. So, sir, welcome to the Brewcast. We're very happy that you were able to take the time out and come talk to us in our audience. And first thing we're going to ask you here is, can you explain to the audience, those who aren't familiar, what is MKTOG? What does it do? What are some of the lines of effort that it helps provide to the Marine Corps?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Ian. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. It's always weird to hear your bio brief to you, and you're thinking, did I do that? Did I do that? Is that me? But thanks for that introduction, and thanks for the Marine Corps University for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of what MKTOG does, is doing, will do, and I've got a unique perspective on MKTOG because I was here as an instructor when it first stood up, and then being blessed to come back here again to be a part of MKTOG and what it means to force design, I think is really, really important. So I'm excited about the next hour, conversations, discussions, questions, and hopefully we can get after some stuff here as we talk through it. But to your question specifically, Ian, what is MKTOG? So Marine Corps Tactics Operations Group, right? Started out in 2008. Like I said, I was one of the first ones here. Didn't know what to expect of it, and really back then the essence of it was, how do we make better operations officers, right? And then so it has grown so much from there. Not only do we have our Flagstaff course, which you mentioned is Advanced Maneuver Warfare course, and that has been an evolution on its own because it used to be called, when I was first here, TMIC, right? Tactical MagTap Integration course. We do so much more now. We bring in not only chiefs amongst the GCE, but intelligence officers, intelligence chiefs. So that there's a smattering of a lot of different MOSs and opportunities that evolve at MCTOG. So what I like about MCTOG now and being here for the last 2 months is it really is a great marriage, if you will, between academia and practitioners. When I say academia, if I think who we have on staff here, I think we've got 3 PhDs and about to be a 4th. We've got educators that have educated across the spectrum, anywhere from elementary ed all the way to postgraduate. We have got in total about 160. 100 of those are Marines, about 45, 50 are civilians. We have some contractors. And so, we really bring in folks and on staff here across the GCE, from infantry, from recon, from artillery, LAR, EOD, you name it. If you're part of an infantry division, we've got you here, AAVs. And so it's a great place for us to really, used to be called the Center of Excellence for the GCE. And so to back up a little bit, we work directly for MAGTF TC, right? That's a 2-star headquarters underneath TCOM. We're here in 29 Palms. And so we at MCTOG, Marine Corps Tactics Operations Group, we focus on the GC, the ground combat element. You've got MOTS that we're all familiar with, been in existence, I think, 30 plus years down in Yuma, Arizona. They focus on the aviation side of the ACE. Right here on this block in 29 Palms, we have McLaw, Marine Corps Logistics Operation Group, right? They do very, very similar things that we do and that MOTS does, but only for the LCE. There's a MSTP, MAGTF Staff Training Program. They're with you in Quantico. They focus on the command element. So all these schoolhouses, not to mention the others from PAC, LANT, the Expedition Warfare training groups, to Bridgeport, we all work together in order to make the Marine Corps better and make this the best training venue we can. So I go back to the earlier conversation about the practitioner and the educator, right? The educators are here to really up our game, ask us those tough questions, and really do great work with the students writ large. And we have 4 courses here that we really train to, right? We have the AMWIC I talked about, the flagship. We've got a new one called Network Engagement. We can talk about that if you'd like. We've got Prep for Combat, which some of us out there might remember that as unit training management. And so how do you train? What goes into that? And this new thing called MCTIMS, right? The Marine Corps Training Information System, Management System. How do we operate in that, right? How do we assess our training? How are training tied to TNRs? And so we give courses on that as well. We now have a Ground Combat Element Commanders course that really focuses on the GC commanders, but does business of GC commanders, right? And what that means from getting behind a map, doing TDGs, having some serious conversation on what it's like to command at a tactical level, what we need to be aware of, new, exciting changes in the Marine Corps from Force Design 2030. OIE comes to mind, right? Operational Information Environment. And we have these discussions for about a week long in the GCE Commanders course. And the goal is, our soon-to-be commanders or current commanders come here to this course post the Lejeune Institute's commanders course, that 2-week course, right? And I know the ACE has a course, or MOTS has a course for their pilot for the commanders. The McLaw has one for their commanders. So you can see we're trying to build these communities where they come to us, kind of get that regrained, if you will, on what's current, what's happening, what's new, what they can expect, and then we send them out there better trained, better equipped with answering some questions and moving out and doing things. So those are kind of the 4 classes that or courses we provide. A big thing we do too, and what I really enjoyed as a new major being here, were these things called BSTXs, Battalion Staff Training Exercises. We're modifying that some now, calling them fleet support teams. And what we're doing is we're going out to the infantry battalions. We're going out to the RD regiments. We're going out to the infantry regiment. We're going out to that GCE community I mentioned, and we're training them. Is it under canvas? Sure. Is it going to the field with them? Sure. Is it giving them academics classes? Yes. Is it trend analysis from what we see at the MWX, right, the MAGTF Warfighter exercise? Sure. Is it Is it throwing a planning problem out there as a higher headquarters, having them work through that, through the Marine Corps planning process, and then executing that in some kind of CPX? Yeah, so we really want to mold ourselves to what the fleet, specifically the GCE, needs and wants. And, it's hard when you align different teams to each other. And what are you doing? What are we doing? And, we need to be a little more cognizant of that going forward and adapting ourselves to support what the GCE regiments, battalions would need. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. Hopefully I answered your question specifically on what MCTOG does.
That does, sir. And in fact, one thing I did want to have you expand a little bit more on is the Advanced Maneuver Warfare course. And partly this is kind of my own personal interest because I first found out about that course, I don't know, it was maybe a few months after I got here to the Krulak Center. I'd never heard about it before, but I was reached out to by, I think it was Dr. Nakashra, who I actually see online here, so it's great to see her name again. But it was an invitation to come and speak to the course and learn some more about it from separate work I'd done on maneuver warfare. And when I went in there and I saw what the course was doing, I was blown away. I'd never seen anything like it as a training class in the Marine Corps. And I was like, man, I wish we could like clone this thing and give it to everybody and get as many people through it, because it was such a unique environment, a unique training structure that they were doing. So if you could, sir, maybe expand on what is the Advanced Maneuver Warfare course does, and what do the students experience when they go through it? What are you trying to get them to experience?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, Ian. And so I'll start with a story, right? And so, like I told you, I was here when we first started off, and this thing called a TMIC back then, Tactical MKTOP Integration course. I believe it was 6 weeks, and we would bring people from all over the Marine Corps, and our focus, like I said, was really the operations officer. And we would bring units up here, O231s, intel analysts, you name the warfighting function, we would come, we would build COCs, and we would put these operations officers, give them their own team, their chief, and all those warfighting functions, and build a COC for them, and then they would plan and execute under canvas here at MCTOG. And it was a good course, but that was, gosh, I'm aging myself. That was 14 years ago, right? And so a lot's changed in 14 years. So what is the AMWIC, to your point now, the Advanced Maneuver Warfare course? It's still some of that, but it's a lot more than that. And so the story goes, I focused on operations officers back then, but now this place, MCTOG, makes ITIs. I'm sorry, OTIs, right? Operations Tactics Instructors, like we did then. But now it's not only the captains and majors and sometimes lieutenant colonels that want to come here and be the operations tactics instructors. It's the chiefs. And I didn't know this till I got here, but if you want to be an 0399 operations chief, master gunnery sergeant in the infantry community, you require AMWIC as a graduation in order to be there. So it's part of the promotion process for our enlisted Marines. The ITIs, intelligence tactics instructors, from both the officers and the chief side, is a really great addition to what I remember as a major, because intel drives ops, and to have that operations intel synchronization occur, it has to happen. And so we force that here, make sure that occurs. And really, in some of these AMWIC courses, you get the best of both worlds, because it's the OPSO and the intel officer of the same unit coming through and learning together. Sometimes it's all four of them, the OPSO, ops chiefs, intel officer, intel chief. And it's invaluable for them. And we see it time and time again on their end of course critiques, and how great that they grew as a team, and they're going to be able to take what they learned here and move out. And so what do they learn here, right? What's the outcomes of this thing called Advanced Maneuver Warfare course? From an OTI perspective, right, they got to be able to do really 6 things, right? They need to be able to synthesize planning to defeat the adversary, really through applying the warfighting functions or warfighting philosophy, excuse me, right? That's number 1. We hope through what they learn here, they feel comfortable and can achieve an advantage through integrating all those warfighting functions, all of them, all 7 of them. Coordinate multi-domain effects to create the advantage I spoke of, right? So that's another one that we feel like they need to do when they right? They got to be able to operationalize their commander's intent during not only planning but execution. That's a key thing. MCTOG, in my view, over the last 14 years, has done a really good job of injecting what is important in planning. But to me, execution is where it's at. Planning is important, But we have that old adage: no plan survives first contact, right? And then you have on the other side. Well, plan is nothing, plan is everything. And so how do you balance that, right? When we try to do that here at MCTOG, I think we're getting better with regards to the hours of planning we do to the hour of execution in either a war game scenario or decision force case, or what we do our Kriegsspiel, which is German for war game, right? And so those are things that we want them to do. They need to apply maneuver warfare in not only design, but evaluation and assessing unit training. So I mentioned we do that prep for combat, and that's by levels. Level 1 is really the buttonology of MCTEMs. That's our junior Marines, up to NCO that are ops chiefs, and you name the GC unit. And really, it's broader than that. I mean, ACE Marines go, LCE Marines come, and so those are done on Pendleton and in Virginia. But then we have level 2, which is for the small unit leader, right? Think NCO, think 2 level, and it gets after how they build a training plan, how they build that and support that as a squad. And then we have level 3, which we're starting to do and starting to get out and do. And that's really company battalion level. That's building training plans. That's UTM, unit training management, that I spoke of. How do you assess? How do you do that? Taking these TNRs. And then really the final thing for an OTI is, we got to make sure they present accurately, timely, and relevant information to the commander to support that decision. Right? And so we do that in about a 5-week period. So it's about 25-day POI, program instruction. And so that's what we do. We do that in multiple different ways. And I'll get at that after I talk about the ITIs, the Intel Tactics Instructors. They do a lot of the same thing, but, big but, it's focused on what they do, what they bring to the fight, and understanding it, right? Modeling and thinking it. And so what you have here is build a holistic understanding of adversary capabilities and tactics across the unit. And some of the people out here might be able to appreciate the work that goes into building these scenarios, that, the depth you have to go in, so the students have some meat to actually look at and analyze and make decisions off of. Create intelligence concepts to support the ground maneuver and that warfighting philosophy we talked about. Synchronize intelligence concepts to support really with the other warfighting functions, right? Into developing this course of actions. All 4 steps, the IPB, intelligence preparation battle space, very important. We apply it here. But we're also starting to think outside the box a little bit more and think about what does it mean to model a thinking in it. It's not just, the most likely, most dangerous enemy course of actions. It's not just the normal 4 steps, but there's transitions between those steps that are important. And if you can build that understanding amongst the OPT, the operational planning team, you're going to be able to get at that solution faster, we think. And so there's a conversation that we're having, and we're actually great discussions in class about deliberate planning and dynamic planning. What's the difference between the two? And so I think the intel officers and intel chiefs really bring a lot to that discussion, because you're only as fast as the actions that you produce, right? And then this is a big one. Leverage multi-domain intelligence operations in support of plan execution. I mean, when I first came in, it was how do you operate in this domain called air, land, and sea. And now you add 2 more dimensions in space and cyber, electromagnetic. I mean, it becomes a daunting task. I used the acronym earlier, OIE, Operations Information Environment, and how critical that is. And so that's a big thing that we're starting to understand, and it really does funnel through that modeling and thinking. I think it's critical to really kind of apply maneuver warfare in the design, evaluation, assessment unit training. Intel battalion needs to be able to train and assess their training right to their TNRs. So we do a lot of that as well. And then really gets to the same one as I talked about the OTIs, that accurate, timely, and relevant info to support the commander's decision making. Right? It's not an individual effort. This is a team effort. Yes, the 2 shop, the intelligence section, OIE that supports that too, may drive the IPB, but they don't just produce it. It's a group effort. All warfighting functions have to be present in order to really get after what we're trying to do to provide the commander the best decision making that they can do. And so that's kind of what the outputs are from the OTIs and the ITIs. I'll stop there for a
That was a fantastic overview. And again, as I just listening to you talk about it, it made me excited about that course again. And I've never taken it. I just got a very small snapshot. But the fact that course exists and that it does what it does for those instructors and those future operations officers, operations chief, and the intel folks. Like I said, I wish it could be cloned and we could put so many people through it, because I think it's hugely beneficial for both what it teaches and how it teaches it in terms of the the volume of Kriegspiel and tactile learning and dynamic learning that it's done. And Dr. Nicastro just said revamp is undergoing. So maybe we'll get a chance to take a look at the next version. So I'd like to kind of transition a little bit to another theme that we had talked about for this discussion here, which is sort of tying all these things that MCTOG does for the fleet day in, day out, when they come to you or when you go to them. But looking at tomorrow, right? Looking down the future and how MCTOG supports the Force Design 2030 effort that's been ongoing since 2019 timeframe, or maybe a little bit earlier, depending on how you want to date the start point. But with all the different programs and courses and training that you offer, what in the Force Design realm specifically has MCTOG done here in the past, and what are you looking to do with it continuing in the future?
Okay, yeah, hey, thank you for that. And before I answer that, we have an MWIC course in October that I can get your spot in if you want to be at. So we can talk later, but if you want to come, we'll take you. So when we talk about Force Design 2030 and what MCTOG can do to support this, and it's really interesting. We're doing a lot of stuff, and I think it's great. And we need to, right? One, to stay relevant. Two, I've had the pleasure of working at headquarters, and I was up there at Program Resources. I was part of some of the IPTs, the integrated planning teams for Force Design, as we look at it from what is 2030 Force going to look like, and what headquarters Marine Corps is doing to prepare and to ensure that timelines are met, and the fleet, the NLRs, all the changes we're making for Force Design, making sure that those marry up with the initial operational capable dates, to the FOC dates. And here I am now at MCTOG, and I did some time at MKTOP TC before I got here, and it's such an interesting perspective for me, because I saw at the headquarters Marine Corps level what that looked like, and then now I'm here at MKTOP TC, specifically MCTOG, working with these units that now have to execute that. And to me, in layman's term, MCTOG, MKTOP TC writ large, we're the bridge. We're the bridge that take these concepts. We take these ideas and where we want to take the Marine Corps in 2030, and we are executing it, finding out what's good, what needs to be better, and we push that back up the machine that is the headquarters Marine Corps, and that's the process we have here. And so MCTOG has really been the key advocate, if you will, for MLR, specifically 3rd Marines, 3rd MLR right now, the Marine Littoral Regiment. And that has been a lot of fun to be a part of, see from the outside, and now being part of MCTOG and supporting Colonel Brady and his team out there. Specifically, we call it the Spartan Trident series, right? You got to name something cool. And so here we are. It's August 2022. Back in December, we did an academics package. They were still called 3rd Marines then. They knew they were going to be an MLR. They were working towards that. They are starting to get their manpower from an OIE perspective and others, and building it out. And so they were on their way to starting to look and feel like an MLR. But make no mistake, they were still a regiment. And so we put together an academics package. And when I say we, I got to stop and talk about all the support that MKTOP TC has had. So yes, MCTOG is the one putting most of this together, but we couldn't do it without MOTS, right? The aviation side of that. MCLOG, MSTP has been a part of the conversations and are supporting us. Obviously, Marine Corps Warfighting Lab has been part of this. TCOM has been sent folks out here. Carrier Strike Group 9 has, so the naval integration piece is happening. I'm sure I'm forgetting a whole bunch of folks, but it is definitely, we call it here a whole of MKTOP TC approach, right? EWTG PAC also has been a huge proponent in helping us out from that naval integration piece. So, that was the academics package, and it was about a week long. It was a crash course on what we think you do, what you think you do. They're 3rd Marines, and this is what the draft TNR says, and these are the type of classes we would give. We would focus on command and control, authorities, composite warfare command, right? What is a stand-in force? How are you going to apply yourself to be that in the future? Logistics, mobility, fires, targeting cycle, kill web, kill chain, intel fusion, everything that you would think sense makes sense, recon, counter recon, all those buzzwords that are coming out now in the Marine Corps. We're applying some rigor as a group here to teach, have those open discussions, and figure out together where we're at. And then fast forward from December to February this year, so just about 3 months later, we did what we call a Plan X, right? And that Plan X, what we did was we took building block approach from the academics package to, like, now we're going to sit around a table, a map on the screen. We're going to talk through some vignettes, right? And some of those vignettes that we really really focused on from an MLR perspective, looking at their TNRs at the time: conduct surface fires, conduct air defense, and conduct littoral maneuver. Those are the three big things that we would spend a full day on. You know, they built we dropped a higher headquarters order on 3rd MLR. They planned it outside of that window of a 2-week Plan X, and came there to kind of working that in the three I talked about: from conduct surface fires, conduct air defense, and then conduct littoral maneuver. And so that was a really good opportunity for them to kind of shake the cobwebs off, or really just, well, not really shake the cobwebs off, but start to if you take a crawl, walk, run method, start to walk a little bit, right, with what they have. Now, in the background of all that, you have CLB3, that's part of that MLR. They're focused on real world things over there in Hawaii and doing stuff. So they were there where they could be, but the Littoral Combat Team 1-3, where were they? They were deployed. So, you know, this that we're about to do with them in September, and I'll go into that in a second, this will be the first time that we have the MLR in its completeness, right? And so we did the Plan X. It was good. We were able to help, I think, shape the service and enable the MLR to have an idea of what we got right, what we didn't get right, where we need help from headquarters and Marine Corps. And one of those conversations was, is a FARC required, right? Is that something that this thing's going to do? I think it's still being worked at. But the great news here is that bridge I talked about between headquarters and Marine Corps and what we think this force is going to do and what we needed to do to actual force doing that. Back to FTC with MCTOG and the others I mentioned are really that bridge. So we closed that out, right? And again, I go back to, you know, a lot of you here listening to this can probably have an appreciation for the amount of work that goes to building a scenario to make this happen, right? In the Pacific, to the detailed mission essential scenario list, right? The measles needed to test the unit, have them put 2 and 2 together, plan that out, make decisions, put it up for review, build a battle rhythm. I mean, there's a lot there that have been done. And then now we're still doing that. And now we're going into what we call the FinX in February. I'm sorry, September, just next month. And so we're going to take a lot of the people I just talked about to Hawaii for really a 3-week period. That first week is going to be a rehash of academics, because, as I mentioned, this will be the first time, you know, that MLR has been together as a whole. And, you know, our manpower model, there's different people with different jobs now. And so it's important to go back and reset and build the opportunity for those discussions to occur on, hey, this is what we think we do. Why is that? What's the TNR say? What's the Met say? What's your mission essential task? How are we going to get after that, right? One thing I have been personally really pleased with, and it's been awesome to watch, is the growth of this thing called the Lab, right? The Littoral Anti-Air Battalion, and the work that they have been done. So from the jump, you know, the Marine Corps has been able to build them out with people and skill sets required to do what the mission essential tasks are for the lab. Now, we're still trying to figure that out. I would argue we're still kind of in an experimental phase of what that's supposed to be and do. But make no mistake about it, they are all in. And it's been really awesome to see them come along the process. So I personally am excited to see what they bring to the fight in next month during the FinX, specifically for a targeting perspective, right, from a conduct, not only surface fires, but air defense and their role with the Corps. So they have been a part of this from the jump, and it's been nice to see. And so in September, we're going to go out there. That first week I talked about academics package. Second week, it's going to be a planning session. They already have the orders. They're already starting to think through it. So it'll go for 4 days, and they'll have a rock rehearsal concept to solidify and figure out if the plan is what they want and any gaps in that plan. And then, you know, that following Monday, we're in execution, in simulation, virtual, constructive. It's going to be great. They're going to have an opportunity then as a full MLR to work through their battalion or their regimental SOP. They actually have a TAC SOP that they're going to allow us to walk them through it, assess it, and see where that thing is. So I think that's really important to mention. To go into an exercise like this with a TAC SOP that we could actually test is phenomenal. And so that's just one aspect that we are doing, and that's the Spartan Trident series. And then guess who comes out in February to the ITX? WX. It's third in the law. And so we have built this really strong relationship with them, and I think it's in the best interest of the Marine Corps that exists right now. And after the ITX MWX, we're looking at them to the IOC, I think, in the fall of next year, and that certification is going to come from their division. And so, if we can help in any way, we will. But that's kind of the growth from just specifically the MLR. So I know that's one of the shiny things in force design that we're trying to get after and understand what their roles and responsibilities are. How do they complement the MU capabilities? And it's a really awesome time to do these type of things. So that's one thing. And we're doing a lot of other things, right? It may not be as sexy as that, but one thing that we do here at MKTOG is we are integrated in some of those integrated planning teams I talked about, understanding what is happening at Headquarters Marine Corps and some of the changes from a TCOM perspective to something as simple as a net that changes, right? Is it seat controls or seat denial? Well, that has implications. And so MKTOG is really a supporting effort in that. And we fly out there to Quantico to support that. Folks fly here, and we're part of the solution, I think, and that's really great to see. And I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. There's something I didn't talk about that I think is really important. And back to my old days being here, we didn't have publications that MKTOG was responsible for. But today, MKTOG has over 70 plus documentations or pubs that we're responsible for, right? And so, that our tie-in on Force Design 2030 and the change that are being made allows us to make those timely updates to our doctrine to incorporate the stuff we're talking about, right? And so that's pretty special to think about. Not to mention, at the MWX and the trends that we're seeing from battalions and regiments that come through here within the GCE, internalizing some of those trends. How do we get after and reverse those trends is really a thing that we're starting to work through now, right? Sometimes it's not as easy as just a 2-hour debrief at the end called a final after action report. Sometimes you need to go back to the units or the units that's coming in 9 months to do an MWX and walk them through the best practices that we've seen, so they have time in their training schedule to right some of the challenges that other units have had. I know that concept's not new, but man, you look at these units teams, the division teams specifically, these units are busy. They're very busy. And so targets of opportunity to me are key out there. So we are tied into the doctrine, to the publications. Sometimes we get an opportunity to make comments to some of those things at the service level, which we appreciate. Talked about the MLR. I think that's a lot of what we do. But something that we take to in our courses, and we can make those changes right away from modeling and thinking enemy that's discussed in network engagement. It's discussed in detail in the commander's course, and it's definitely discussed and applied at the Advanced Maneuver Warfare course. And so we're making changes as we go. We have that luxury, if you will, as a MAGTF TC family to understand what trends are going on and put them right back in our schoolhouses and make those changes very quickly. And so that's something I think we all need to appreciate, because it's not easy, but it happens, and good things happen. So I'll hold there for any questions.
So I kind of have a 2-part question, if you will, to sort of tie some of these things together, and then I'll just put it out there to the audience right now. If you have questions for Colonel Greene, go ahead and start throwing them in the chat here, because once I'm done with my last one here, I'll turn over to them, and I know there's already 1 or 2 in there. But kind of the last thing I wanted to cover with you, sir, was you talked about trends a lot, and sort of the trends you see, and then how you feed back to shape or correct or quash a bad trend and reinforce a good one. But I'm kind of curious, and with all the things you run in terms of the the force on force MWX type exercises, what are some of the trends that you see there on those kind of the regular menu of things that you do? And then for the work you've done with the third MLR and in support and force design, what are some of the trends you've seen in that box, if you will, in the because a lot of that is trying new things that are, we're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. What are some of the trends you've seen on that side as well?
Yeah, and so this is really a MagTap TC process, and MCTOG is one of many organizations that apply time, rigor, observer controller, assessment tools into building these lessons learned, if you will. But the new word is FER, right? Final Exercise Report, and those can be found online. They're on our SharePoint site at MCTOG. And if you guys want, I can give you direction how to get to that. But we do that at every MWX, right? And so over the last 2 years, so the Marine Corps has run 9 MWXs, the MagTap Warfighting Exercise. That's that force on force exercise. It's non-live fire, but it is essential to understand and fight against a thinking enemy, right? Peer v peer type approach happens here in 29 Palms at the very end of ITX, the Integrated Training Exercise. And we've done 9 of them as a Marine Corps, and I've had the pleasure of being here for 3 of them recently. So I've seen the last 3, and every single one of them are a little bit different in the sense of the scope and scale. I've seen division come out here and play as a higher headquarters with 2 regiments underneath it against the regiment headquarters reinforced. I've seen regiment v regiment fighting against each other with almost 3 infantry battalions apiece. So a lot of goodness, and we've had upwards of 10 to 12,000 people in the box doing just that in that 5-day event. So we at MCTOG we have the pen to make these final exercise reports, but it's definitely a team effort. McLaw, Mods, MSTP is coming to force being a part of these, which is awesome to see, especially when you bring that 2-star level headquarters up here to be a player in this. Even PAC is starting to send folks up here, and so it really is getting after what I talked about earlier. But to your point about some of those trends, so we've had 2 EOSs, executive offsites over the last year, and MagTap TC has had the opportunity to brief at both to go over some of those trends, and so I'll highlight about 6 of them that we see. The first one is it gets after that signature management, right? Ops. In a D2, C2 environment, right? That operational information environment piece that I talked about earlier, right? Some sub bullets of that is what we're seeing is the FMF is starting to increasingly, they're starting to understand the multi-domain signatures, right? They know it's not just air, land, sea anymore, right? You have to add those other 2 dimensions in order to have that holistic single battle concept, if that's what we're going to do, right? And so we're seeing that get better. And I think justification for that is, I talked about how we're able to take some of that good stuff and move it right back in to our schoolhouses, not just MCTOG, McLaw, Mods, not to mention the divisions and the great work they're doing, taking the commandant's direction. And each division, 1st and 2nd, are looking at this counter recon piece differently. Sense makes sense, what they're doing with their LARs and how they're, revamping that target cycle to build these kill webs. Each are doing it a little bit differently, but both being successful, right? And 3rd Marine Division, that's the outlier from a sense of they're the ones that are going to be receiving these MLRs. Question on how many, 2, 3, I don't know, but it's going to change the landscape. And Division, to their credit, saying this is going to change our responsibilities and our abilities. So you can expect in the future to see what does 3rd Marine Division look like, because I think it'll look a little bit different based off of just their MSCs underneath, right? LRs to whatever that's going to be. And so I think we're at the cusp of those conversations occurring. But the bottom line there, back to my point about the trends, is we're getting better at that. It's just not to where we think it's enough to, we have to keep our foot on the pedal, right? Another one is types of contact and spectrum limitations, and signal management, missions control. When do you talk in the box, when you're not? Are you sensed? If you are, will you be destroyed? How big of a COC, how big of a signature you have. These are things we're seeing and a lot of discussions going on, and we're seeing growth there. From point in the first couple of MWXs, units were keeping their COCs back and not putting them inside the box because of fear of being destroyed. And then now you'll see units go forward and put their forward out there in the box, have a jump go out, or an Alpha Bravo command operate entirely within the box and within being in that threat ring, if you will. I think we got to continue education, organization, and identify those capability gaps. That conversation has to continue. And I know Headquarters Marine Corps is really looking at that deeply, and a lot of big things are being written about that right now. And so it's important to ground yourself in some of those writings, and then determine functions to be present to support operations. Right? What do we have now? How do we operate? What are the new capabilities that we have? When do we use them? How does that help shape the commander's decision making? Those are kind of things in that signature management OIE perspective. So that's one. Another one we're seeing is command and control integration across all warfare functions. Right? It does talk a little about emissions control, aligning that with conditions with the unit's PACE plan. How do you distribute command and control to be resilient and survival, to my point earlier? How do you plan to rehearse that information flow between the command and control nodes? And what are the new relationships from a DS to a supported to a supporting to a GS for increased responsibility? How do you do that now when we're talking command and control, all these new toys that are coming out here? And I think we're starting to really have ideas and thoughts about it, and units are starting to put those inside their TAC SOPs. So that's a good one kind of anchor on, because internally I look at, if we're seeing a trend that we don't like, and it's in command and control integration across our work. I have to look internally and say, what are we MKTOG going to do to fix that? I'm not saying we're the only solution, but darn it, we should have solutions for it. Right? Are we doing COC operations properly? Is the ops chiefs that we create we don't create, but we advance their knowledge. Are they comfortable and confident in order to build that COC and make it, to my point earlier, resilient and survival, right? And so this one's near to me, because I think MKTOG, we are responsible. The roses pinned on us to go after that one, and I think we're starting to. A third one is integration of sensors and that reconnaissance counter-reconnaissance, right? How do you integrate that multi-domain sensors? Really through the company all the way to, I say regiment, but I think as we see other units come through here, like a division, I think you had division that. In February, I told you got the MLR coming out here. Well, their higher headquarters is coming too. It's going to be 3rd Marine Division. How do they integrate multi-domain sensors, right? So those are conversations that are occurring now, and I'm curious to see how this next MDOBX attacks that trend, right? Sensor redundancy to support decision making. To me, organic and non-organic comes along. If you have organic capabilities that you can get after some of this sensor redundancy, then you do it. And if you don't, then redundancy is an important word here. And we got to make sure we have more than just one leg, because you can't just have that single point there. And if you do, you're assuming a lot of risk, isn't it? And then battle drills to integrate efficiency into kill webs execution, right? What we see time and time again here at MWX is all these high speed, from ISR platforms to different tools that we have, to aircraft in the air, to give us that picture, to cover down on that NAI. When you're talking about closing that kill chain, you know who's always involved in that conversation at MWX? It's the stay platoon or stay team. Snipers battalion has. It's recon units, all weather platforms, right? All weather people that are out there being able to make sure that kill web, that targeting cycle, if you will, is closed. And so integrating that, I think, is becoming more challenging as we move forward. But I am optimistic, because I think that people are thinking outside the box, applying the redundancy I talked about, and just the model of thinking enemy right. If you feel comfortable with where you're at, with knowing what the enemy's going to do, you have an ability to out-cycle the enemy, then I think that one I just talked about from the integrated sensors and counter recon is going to come naturally. We're going to do really, really well. All right, so the next one is, we call it tactical basics. It's much more than, are there camionets set up right? It's much more than the human factors. All very important. But to us, tactical basics is, how do you achieve tempo in a multi-domain environment, right? Tempo is not easy to maintain. That momentum is important. Out-cycle the enemy, the old adage of OOLA loop, right? That still applies. That's part of modeling thinking enemy and getting out in front of that. And so tempo to us is something that we see time and time again. If you gain tempo early at MWX and you maintain it, you're going to be ahead of the enemy. If you are not, and you're having a hard time understanding and figuring out where the enemy might be, because 29 palms is big, then you're going to have a hard time maintaining that tempo. And while you're not maintaining the tempo, while you're not gaining efficiencies in what you're doing, your sustainment is dwindling, right? And you're losing that edge, and it's hard to get out of that funk, if you will. Technical techniques and terrain defilade, the mass signature, that's kind of back to the old human factors and doing the right thing. And what we've noticed, though, when we're talking command and control in those COCs, forward jump, Alpha, Bravo, command structure, man, units are doing a heck of a job finding some great defilade, getting in some of these bodies and 29 homes to where I'm in a vehicle, I have a hard time finding, right? And so if you're looking down from an ISR platform, which we get that feed and we show them in the AARs, where is the unit at? Where is that COC? Sometimes you can't see it. Sometimes it's obvious. And so those are the points there. And then this is a tough one, and it's about deception. It's easy to say deception. You have to have deception plan. How do you assess that? How do you implement that? And it's becoming more challenging because in order to be effective at deception, you have to apply resources to do that. And I don't know if all commanders are willing to make that. And that's their prerogative. They can do that. But deception is a powerful tool, especially in this multi-domain environment. That the good news there is people realize that. They discuss it. It's part of their planning. They spend a lot of time in their war games, in their rehearsal of concepts, in their combined arms rehearsals, talking about that and commanders will make it a priority. It's just in that 5-day execution window. It's really hard to see them get the fruits of their labor sometimes. And so it's not until when we do the FIR, right, the final exercise report, where units that we take a step back and the units are in the classroom talking like, hey, why'd you do that? And they're like, oh, we did this. It was a deception on them. And man, you got us because we put resources towards that. We didn't think that was anything, right? That helicopter dummy drop, we thought that was real. And so we changed our calculus. That's how you were able to come from behind. So these conversations are priceless to have. But unfortunately, it's after the fact. And so deception is something that I think we need to really take a hard look at after. Another one is logistics in a contested environment. That's a challenge because it's just as much fault the GCEs that is as the LCEs here, because it's when you're in a 5-day evolution, it's go. It's yes, you can plan your heart out before NWX 1800 that Monday it starts. And a lot of units they plan hard during ITX last 2 weeks. They're focused on this problem set, and it goes back to my comment earlier about no plan survives first contact. So you have to make a plan that's flexible. You have to make a plan that's adaptable to what the enemy's going to do to you. And logistics, there's when you talk about a combat logistics patrol going out to resupply a unit, this is tactical logistics I'm talking about. Do they have do they understand where they need to go, who they're resupplying, what they're resupplying? The answer is yes in the planning, but in execution, it's tough. One thing that we've noticed that actually is getting fixed is, to talk encrypted from a combat logistics patrol or platoon, they need PRIC 117, so they need to be able to do that, and they don't have that in those units. And so what's happening now is they know that coming here, and so they're talking to the GC, they're talking to others, even coming to us, asking us if they can borrow them, and so they start off the NWX with the appropriate coming. The challenge, though, is, how do they practice with it and rehearse and get good with it before they got here, right? And so I think we need to look at, that's a .NLPF challenge. I think it's been discussed up at the head with Marine Corps level. That's going to find its way down to the next level. But that communication, entering someone's battle space, requesting permission to do that, the unit that's owning that battle space, do they know that clip's there? Those type of conversations. And that whole push-pull logistics is something that it's unique to units, unique to what the commander wants to do and how they want to approach this. And, we now have conversations about caching sustainment items, and that's occurring. And so some would say it's successful because, they put these out there. They either get credit for it or it's actual water, chow, ammo, what have you, and units pick it up and move out with it. So we're really thinking outside the box, and there's an ACE integration piece here from using our assault wing to support and resupply units that I think is starting to be appreciated more, because that you can't just ask for 3 hours beforehand. That's got to be put in the ATO cycle. Build speedballs, build these things for contingencies, but planning will support, and you can almost estimate when you think that unit's going to need that resupply, and that's that push piece I talked about, right? And then the last one is integration aviation. This is an interesting one because, again, I don't think we look at the ACE and say the mag that comes up here just doesn't get it. That's not it at all. If anything, I think it's a challenge because our mags really, their challenge is how do they integrate early and often in planning? Sometimes they're not co-located. You name the technology series and what they're doing to support the GCE, making sure they understand the plan. And then integration of ACE command and control from a MAC perspective, making sure it's also, when that aircraft leaves Centra or Miramar, or you name it, and they come up, who's the DAS? Who's the assault liaison support team? Who do they push that off to? Where does that connection occur? Is it the FAC on the ground? Is it the aerial of the unit? And so there's a procedural piece that we're trying to get after here that I think everyone understands it's a challenge, and we're working through it. And there's this common operational picture that I think across the MAGTAF, it's not resonant in everyone's COC, right? ACE does a good job with their COP from a C2, CA-C2S perspective to the ground, focus on the ground, and the LC tied into that. But I think there's a MAGTAF COP that needs to be understood and appreciated, and I think we're getting to that. And so I'll stop there. Those are the 6 big ticket items that we're seeing here. We're getting out and talking to units about it, hopefully educating them as they start to go through their next iteration of training before they come out here and execute ITX. Over to you.
I think that is a great list of things for people to chew on and think about, even outside of training, but something that we can think about here inside MCU and the Krulak Center as we're trying to get students to think about these things, in a classroom environment, so that the first time they're thinking about it is not when they show up in 29 bombs ready to do one of your exercises. So we are coming up on an hour, but I do want to make sure we get to some of the questions that have been typed in here, and I do have a couple. So I'll knock those out, and then if we get a couple more, I'll see if we have time. But otherwise, I'll go through just the couple questions here, and then we'll wrap things up. So first question is from G.I. Wilson, and I appreciate his patience because he asked this about 40 minutes ago, and we're getting into it now. But it was a good conversation, so I'm glad we had it. But his question is, are you familiar with the maneuver warfare studies or work of Naval Postgraduate School by Dr. Augier? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And if so, have you collaborated at all with MWS on maneuver warfare thinking or mindsets or decision making?
Yeah, hey, G.I. Wilson, good question. I wish I had a better answer for you. I have talked to a few people on staff there at NPS, and there is a desire and a need to link up and do what you're getting at, right? I think you're implying that, hey, there's a lot of good work happening outside of MAGTAF, GC, and MCTOG that deserves to be read and deserves to be discussed. Yeah, and we need to do that. I'll reach out to Dr. Augier and talk more about that, because there is some time that has to occur, because I think there's strength in ensuring that we're nested in our conversations, right? Because an NPS grad who leaves there and goes to their payback tour, will apply what they learned there based off the disciplines they learned. But they're going to come back and more than likely be an OPSO, be an XO in their growth. They're going to apply what you're talking about right here. And so we need a better job of that.
I'm going to go a little bit out of order because another question popped up, but because I kind of want to save the other one for last, because it's from someone here who's also a MCTOG alum. But we'll go to the last one first, and then back to that. So the next one is from, I'm hoping I get the name here right, is Major Ord, saying that you mentioned briefly educating students in maneuvering in the electromagnetic spectrum. Could you briefly describe how the curricula addresses this?
Yes. So a lot of what we do is unclass with this, so we don't really touch the detail I think you're wanting to hear. So from the electromagnetic spectrum, we do a lot of the discussions and the planning of what capabilities exist and how we can use those. Specifically, when we are observer controllers out there at MWX, we have some really great capabilities that we contract from turning things on and turning things off, those are the art of that is when do you do that? When do you make those decisions? When you're gonna and now I'm not jumping back to AMWIC, right? To your point, when you're a student in one of our courses here, you start to build this plan for the commander to make a decision on. Do you want to collect? Do you want to turn off? Do you want to monitor? And if you do, how long do you want to do that for before action's on the objective? And those always end up being hardy conversations. But I feel like if I go much more into that, we're going to go a different level of classification. But I think the bottom line there is we do discuss it. It is a planning tool that we use to make sure from a multi-domain perspective, it is happening. I think a question that we're wrestling with, though, is along the competition continuum and specifically in competition, what does that look like? And who's doing that? And how do we have authority to make that happen? Because sometimes we don't think it's going to be the Marine Union. It might be our higher headquarters. It could be the Navy. It could be somebody else. And so tapping into that understanding, that organic, non-organic capabilities I kind of talked about earlier, I think is important to know there too. So good discussions that we have in planning, and we talk through it, but we don't get to the detail of this widget does X, and that's why we use it from this time to this time. We have the open conversation about don't forget about these capabilities. They need to be applied and employed because they get after what you want. And some of these talk to deception, right? I mean, I think that's a big piece of some of this too. But hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. And in fact, to your point about in the competition spectrum, I'll do a foot stomp back to a broadcast we did a couple months ago with the commanding officers of 2nd and 3rd MiG, because that kind of discussion about what are you doing in the competition space when there's nothing flying around yet, but you're still in there in the information environment, and that overlaps with the EM spectrum. So for listeners who may want to get a little bit more into that, we had 2 colonels and 2 MiGs on there to talk about that. So that'd be a good thing to go back and reference for that very difficult competition space to get after. Okay, so last question I got, and I saved this for last because it's from Lieutenant Colonel Curtis Kobeck, who is a former MCTOG he put in there. He's also he's a Krulak Center alum. He's over at the operations office now at MCU, but obviously he's still plugged in here. So for the benefit of those who are going to listen to the recording later, I'm going to go through his comments and then his question, because they are pretty detailed, but I think it's important for the final context of the question. He has background at MCTOG. He saw the Kriegspiels, the tactical decision games, decision forcing cases, how they allowed students to play in hasty planning, execution, decision making. And then he came here to the Krulak Center, where he saw another former MCTOG CO and former McWill veteran, Colonel Tim Barrick, who is now our director of wargaming at MCU and with the Krulak Center, and seeing what could be done with the depth and breadth of commercial games, both tabletop and computer, that can simulate almost anything you want to. Different types of terrain, different force capabilities, historic force constructs, future force constructs, all the warfighting functions. And then finally, his question to you is, has anyone explored or is there an ongoing relationship with Mr. Barrick, or we have the Marine Corps Warfighting and Analysis Center, or MCWAC, which I'm pointing out on my screen here because it's literally on the other side of my wall. They're building it. What's your relationship, or what do you think the relationship with those entities is going to be, as potentially as an asset of training and educational tools for your instructors and those who go through your courses? That was a lot, but I think it was important to get all that context.
No, hey, thanks for that question, Curtis. And so, yes, we do. I know Colonel Barrick very well. He was the OPSO here when Colonel I was a brand new major. I think the world of him. I know he's up there at the Warfighting Center now, and he's running that show. And we have a section here, a department, if you will, at MCTOG. We call it EC9. That stands for Experimentation, Concepts, and Innovation. Right. Matter of fact, as I speak, they're driving home from 1st Marines, the regiment. They were down there, dropped a higher headquarters order on them, and they worked through that. It was in the country of kind of a coastal country, and they use exactly what you're talking about, the tabletop exercise. And they were rolling dice, depending on what kind of capabilities they get. And from the initial indications I get back from my team was very, very helpful. Very helpful from a standpoint of planning, and then executing that in a controlled environment, if you will, kind of a war game-esque with that tabletop exercise. And so, if you're good at a team like 1st Marines who's just forming, they've been together for some of the staff just got there this summer. What a great way to go up and get out the gate and get after it, right? To break down some of that tension or some of that not understanding each other with roles and responsibilities, to start to build a cohesive unit, right? So I thought that was great. To your point, yes. So my EC&I department does talk to the War Gaming Center. But one thing that in my short time being here, I've noticed is, the War Gaming Center is focused really, up and out, focused at the larger scales units in the Marine Corps. And they have the money, the backing, they've got the computer, they've got all that great data they need in order to do that. What I found interesting when I got to MCTOG, it's 2022, I was expecting to see screens up and doing some of that. We roll out maps, we roll dice, we have these discussions on maps. I mean, let's here just to kind of give you an idea. This last AMLIC we just graduated, I did some roll up of what we accomplished, right? So out of 160 hours of that curriculum, of that five-week POI, program instruction, they did 6 TDGs, tactical decision-making games. It's 22 hours on a map. They did 5 Kriegspiels, totaling 40 hours, 2 full days, really. That included our Spartan Eagle. You might be familiar with that exercise, where the students and the instructors fight each other on the game board. And then 3 decision force cases that are 11 hours. So if you add that up, 22, 40, and 11, you're a little bit over 70. That's almost half of the curriculum here at AMLIC. So yes, we're getting after it, but I think at MCTOG's level, we're less on the virtual and the constructive. My question to the team is, can we get there? Should we get there? And so I think in the future we're going to find that. But I'm new here, so I've got plenty of time to develop that. I think you're onto something. But that's where I think the bifurcation is right now. They focus up and out at the larger scale. I know the Warfighting Center is being used for Force Design 2030 conversations, and McLog is actually hosting McWill 2 weeks from now, doing Maltese Dragon here in the compound. And so that'll be interesting to see what comes out of that war game. But I'd like to say we're nested tightly, but I think there's still some growth to your point, and we need to look at that. And if we know they do up and out, we do what we do from a games perspective and more hard skills on a map, type conversations, dry erase board. We still got to make that linkage and make sure that along someone's continuum, their roadmap of being an intel officer, being an intel chief or OPSO ops chief, or being whatever that is along that staff, that growth makes sense, and it's a building block. I hope that answers your question, but we are tied in with this.
I absolutely think it does answer the question, sir. And I think the distinction you made, like the up and out, and then the other thing is, this is more for the benefit of the audience for those who are going to listen later. But I think that's a valuable distinction to reemphasize when we have the opportunity, because I know something at the Krulak Center and Marine Corps University has gotten, as the MCWAC is getting stood up, is, well, what are you guys going to do with them, right? Like, are they going to take you, or are they going to, do all the stuff with the students? And the point we always try and make is, like, it's not one or the other. It can be both, because absolutely they are up and out at a very high level of detail. But what about the rest of us? The masses who don't necessarily need that level of detail or that level of classification, but they still need something to challenge their decision making, to be able to build a plan and then fight it against a thinking enemy and watch it fail and then adapt and adjust. And you can absolutely do that with maps and dice as much as you do with a bunch of computers. And I can say, and I'm pretty sure Lieutenant Colonel Kovac can back this, is that we have a couple of game systems here, to include one that is just It was developed by a former Marine sergeant. It's just like little wooden blocks and cards and stuff, where you kind of war games a notional Marine Littoral Regiment. But man, you can still induce so much stress and friction and chaos just using those very simple tools. And the nice thing is you don't need a giant, skiff to be able to do it. You can take it anywhere and induce that stress wherever the Marines are, which is one of the valuable things. Okay, we're over an hour now, and I don't have any additional questions. So, sir, I'm happy to give you, if you want to make any final comments or points for the audience here before we leave.
I really appreciate the opportunity, guys. This was my first podcast, so hopefully it was enjoyable for you. I really had a blast. I hope this is just the start of a relationship where, we can get out in front of this and talk through what the GC is doing, what MKTOP GC, specifically MCTOG, is doing to support those efforts from Force Design 2030 and some of the courses we run here. And all because if you're out there and you're not in the GCE, you're an officer in an ACE unit, but you feel like there's a lot I could learn from AMWIC, call us. We take them too at times, right? Depending. But I said earlier, we have requirements that we have to get Master Sergeants through this course as well, and we have priorities that we have to give. But we've been willing to do that for both the ACE and LCE. So thanks for the opportunity. Hope it was worth your time. It was mine. It helps me think about what we're doing and what we do. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Ian.
We've been very lucky on this program to be able to sit down with a bunch of commanding officers of different units in the Marine Corps over the last few months who are, really at the forefront of not just force design, but also grappling with all the very complex issues, emerging domains, emerging technologies in the future operational environment. And the fact that you've been able to, all of you, given us your time to do this and share us with our wider audience, we're extremely grateful for. So they're definitely very useful, and I'm very excited to get this one posted out once I get through the editing. All right, so to everyone in our audience, hey, thanks for staying on here. I think you found it was a very good discussion, and definitely a great way to kick off Season 5 of the Broadcast. We hope that you can all join us for next week's episode, where we'll be talking to Ms. Ada Sain from the Kizbazina project in Turkey. We first learned about this project from a wargaming exercise that we ran for the NATO Allied Rapid Reaction Corps in the UK a few months ago. And if you'd like to know more about the ARRC and how they use wargaming to train, which is a very interesting perspective, you can check out our past broadcast interview with some of their team members. But the Kizbazina project aims to increase the place of women in the defense and security sector, strategic decision-making mechanisms, and domestic and foreign policy tables in Turkey. And to do this, they've created a unique war game called Women in Command Hybrid Threat Rising, which has already seen use in Europe and the United States. So Ms. Sain will discuss this project and the unique wargaming platform they've created. And finally, while I have you all here with the broadcast back, we've also resumed our special mini-series that focuses on the ongoing war in Ukraine. Yesterday, I just posted a new episode of Down the Rabbit Hole on the Russia-Ukraine war with our Russia subject matter expert, Dr. Yuval Weber, where we talked about the current phase of the war, the grain and gas supply chain issues, and the ongoing humanitarian crises caused by the war. Make sure you get caught up, because we'll have new episodes coming out regularly to bring new insights to you in our audience in as close to real time as we can get it. So again, thank you all for joining us. Colonel Greene, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. And everyone else, make sure you're on our email distribution list or following us on social media for this and new episodes.
Education is what's important. Training, preparation for the expected. Education, preparation for the unexpected.